Okay, part 2, 803. I'm going to do one more of factoring where the lead coefficient is not 1. Okay, remember factoring is the opposite of FOILing. You're breaking it down into its two components. Now, I've got 3x squared minus 11x plus 3 equals 7. What's wrong with this? It's not in descending order. Well, actually, it is in descending order, but I have a constant over here. And it has to be equal to 0 in order to solve it. So I need to move that 7 over. So let's subtract 7. And we get 3x squared. We bring down the negative 11x and bring down a negative 4 and set it equal to 0. So that's a key. You got to have it always equal to 0 because that's where it crosses the x-axis. Remember, we're finding the roots where we're crossing the x-axis where y is 0. Okay, we got to factor. So there's not a common factor because you got a 3, an 11, and a 4. No common factors. So now I have to figure out how this factors. Take the front number, 3x squared. The only way to get a 3 is a 1 and 3. So it's got to be a 1x and a 3x. Doesn't matter. I can put either one in the front. I'm just going to go ahead and put a 1, 3 and a 1. But doesn't matter. You don't have to write this one. I'm just doing it for this problem. Now the back. I can either have a 2 times 2 or a 4 times 1. Now, I'm looking at this, and that number's fairly large for this problem, so it's probably 4 and 1 because these numbers have to be further apart to get large numbers. Okay, so I'm going to try a 4 and a 1. So if I put a 4 here and a 1 here, I'm going to subtract to find it. That's 3, outer is 3, inner is 4. So their difference is not 11. So let's switch spots. 4 and 1. Outer is 12. Inner is 1. Bingo. There we go. They subtract or have a difference of 11, don't they? So I need this to be a negative 11. So that means it's going to be negative 12, positive 1. And there's how it factors. Set each part equal to 0 because this times this equals 0. So my two solutions are x equals negative 1/3. How did I get that? I set that equal to 0 and solved it. What is this one? X equals positive 4 because I set it equal to 0 and I solved it. So there are my two solutions. So on the graph, I would be at, let's see, negative 1/3 and positive 4. And the parabola faces up, so it's going to be really skinny and face up because of that 3, isn't it? There you go. And that's graphically, algebraically, how to get roots. Okay, let's take one more second and go over just what do you need to know for the mid-unit test. Mid-unit test. So you're going over lessons 1, 2, and 3. So 801, 802, and 803. First, given a quadratic in standard form, because that's the most common. Let's just take this one, x squared plus 8x plus 15. There's my function. Okay, if this is standard form and I need to find the y-intercept, remember y-intercept was just 0, c, where this is my c, so that means if I plug a 0, don't these just 0 out and I'm left with c? How do I find my vertex? Easiest way in standard form is negative b over 2a. So I'm going to plug in a negative 8, because that's my b, over 2 times 1, and I get negative 4. That's only the x-coordinate. To find the y-coordinate, I just plug and chug. So negative 4 quantity squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 15. 16 minus 32 plus 15 gives me negative 16 plus 15, which is negative 1. So that means my vertex is x, negative 4, y, negative 1. Negative 4, negative 1. So there's a down and dirty quick. How do you deal with standard form? And there you go. okay? Remember the axis of symmetry is going to be halfway between those two roots. So if I have a root at -4 and -1, they're only 3 units apart. So that means halfway is 1½ from this end and 1½ from this end. So that means it's going to be at 2½. So my axis of symmetry is at -2.5, or halfway between those. Add and divide by 2. So any questions on that? Come back in the room and ask me. Okay, that's standard form. Now vertex form. Vertex form, you just need to be able to look at it, decide what the vertex is out of the equation. If you have 3x minus 5 squared plus 1. What is our vertex? I hope you guys are singing opposite h and the same as k. Opposite h and the same as k. The opposite of h and the same as k. There's your vertex. +5, +1. And our axis of symmetry is always through this vertex, through the x coordinate. So it's going to be axis of symmetry goes through x is 5. What do we mean by that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 1. This parabola faces up. The axis of symmetry is the line that goes straight down the center. So just a quick little refresher of what that looks like. It's a vertical line, so it's x equal. Okay, what happens if I have an equation and I need to switch it from standard form to vertex form? I have to do one of those completing the square things. Okay, let's try to do that. 4x plus 5. If I have it in standard form and I need to switch it to vertex form, remember how I did this the other day? I group the first 2 terms together and I leave my constant dangling for a minute. And I'm going to take the b, divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. This is called completing the square. I'm going to spend a lot more time on this in just a few minutes. Okay. Divide b by 2 and then square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Squared, 2 squared is 4. So I need a 4 right here so I can complete a perfect square. Now if I add 4 to this binomial right here, I have to subtract it on the outside to keep this equation equal, don't I? Because if I'm adding 4 and subtracting 4, it's zeroing itself out. I'm just disguising. Last night was Halloween. I just disguised 0 in the 4 and -4. That's all I did. Okay, now that's a perfect square trinomial. It factors into x plus 2 quantity squared, right? X plus 2 times x plus 2, or x plus 2 quantity squared plus 1. Guess what? I'm now in vertex form. Opposite h and the same as k. Opposite of h and the same as k. There's our vertex. -2, +1. Okay? And that's how you switch it around. Well, that should get you through pretty much everything that you need to know, other than just looking at a graph and estimating where the roots are. And surely you guys can do this. Okay, you're reading our graph. Here is my Cartesian coordinate plane. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If I have a graph that is coming down between these 2 numbers, and then it's going back up between these 2 numbers, what are my approximate roots? Let's see. This one is falling between a -1 and a -2, just about halfway. That means one of my solutions will be -1.5. Over here, my solutions are falling between +1 and +2, but it's a little bit closer to +2. So it's about 1.75. And those would be my estimated roots. Voila. Okay, that should get you through the MidUnit quiz, make a 100.